So all you need to know in this problem is the formula. You don't have to solve. So if the formula is pi r squared height, which answer would you have? F, G, H, or J?
G.
G, right? So these are the ones that we were talking about would be an easier kind of question where once you figure out the formula and you're saying, what am I going to do? I'm really just replacing. They told me to use 3.14 for pi. So that's why 3.14 is in all of the problems. Then they said I should use, or I know I should use R. So I'm looking for the ones with a 4, which would only be G or J. Then I'm putting the height. So all of them have 20 as the height, right? The only difference between the G and the J is that you have to remember that you're squaring the radius. So you're just picking out the one that would match, and you're reading, right? So what we said is even in math, you have to read that 8 is the diameter. So you don't want to use that 8 in the formula. So any questions about number 6?
No.
Fabulous. So number 7 is open-ended, but you're using these same dimensions. So you're thinking of the cylinder, and the diameter is 8 centimeters, and the height is 20 centimeters. So now you're saying to yourself, how many square centimeters of labeling are needed to cover the can, excluding the 2 bases? So essentially, that's kind of like we've already talked about. If you had like a soup can or something like that with a paper label, they're only talking about that cylinder part. They're not talking about the 2 circles that are the top and the bottom.
Okay.
So there's surface area that is the whole shape, like making the can out of aluminum or something like that. And then this is covering only the cylinder lateral side surface, right? So when they say excluding the 2 bases, they mean you're not covering the 2 circles. So that formula, do you remember that formula?
The 2 pi r.
Which one for the
Times R.
Pi times R2.
Yes. So you can do it in 2 different ways, right? It is this part. Well, actually, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just making sure. I have another tab open. This is the whole thing that we saw in the textbook when they pulled apart the cylinder, and it had, let's see. This was from 7.3, but the textbook. So this is going back a little ways.
We just have to do the rectangle, right?
Which one?
Just measure the rectangle.
The
Height
what?
the rectangle.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So can you see this one?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what they're basically saying. Just the rectangle part, and the way that you're figuring that out is 2 pi r h. So because it's going to curve like the cylinder, it does have pi in it, but essentially it is just the rectangle. So you're trying to get this picture in your mind if they're saying, what's the surface area of the label? Or like this one, what's the surface area excluding the bases? What you're saying is that the base of a cylinder is a circle. So that's the part that you don't need. And in the formula, if you have it written down on your index card or something, the formula is the 2 pi r h and then plus 2 pi r squared. So the pi r squared is a circle, and you have 2 of them for the top base and the bottom base. So for this question, you're just saying to yourself, you didn't need that part of the formula. So you can drop it. It's just addition. So like we said, you have your base formula that you might be writing on the index card or memorizing, but depending on what the story is, you don't need to apply the whole thing. So all you're thinking here is 2 times pi times the radius times the height. And if you are, you know, thinking that 2 times pi times radius, you could just say, I'm going to use the diameter, right? Because 2 times the radius is going to give you the diameter. So it's up to you. You might have said it's pi times the diameter times the height. Both of those things are going to give you the same number. So if you said 2 times 3.14 times 4 times 20, you should have 502.4.
Okay.
Do you have that?
Yes.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry.
And then, just making sure. So if you did it the other way, where you're just going to keep the diameter, 3.14 times 8 times 20, you would still get the 502.4. So it just depends on how you're thinking about it. Because this problem already starts with the diameter, then you might just leave the number 8 and the number 20. If you're already thinking about the radius, maybe you were thinking about the radius from the previous problem, number 6, then you would say, I'm going to do 2 times pi times r times the height. And you're remembering that every character goes in its own box. So you're going to have a 502.4 to make sure that the computer recognizes the right answer. And then we're just going to do number 8, and then we're going to come back to this. So I just wanted to show you the TASC website. So after this one, we're going to go flip over to the TASC website. So now this one says, use this information for 8 and 9. So the same thing. You're going to make sure you take the story part into both problems. The right triangle base of a triangular prism has side lengths of 8, 15, and 17. The prism has a height of 20 inches. So now this is where you are going to picture something, because it's saying right triangle base of a triangular prism. So because it's a right triangle and they give you the 8, the 15, and the 17, you're going to have to understand what that looks like. And then you're just picking out of F, G, H, and J, which way you're going to multiply. So if the height of the whole prism is 20, which one can you eliminate right away?
F.
F, right? Because they have 17 as the height of the prism, right? So when we're thinking about, let me see. It's saying 8 times 15 times 17, but they're telling you that it's a right triangle. You want to say that you're already imagining the prism like this, right? So if they gave you an 8, a 15, and a 17, then 15 is the base of the triangle. But this one is a, you know, triangular prism. Let me see if I can. You're imagining that it has some other depth, right? And then this part is the part that's 20, is the depth of the whole triangular prism. But the first thing that you're starting with is the measurements that they're giving you about the right triangle. So when they say right triangle again, you're going to say automatically that the longest side of the right triangle is the hypotenuse. So you're thinking that the 8, 15, and 17 is the triangle part. And that's why we're saying, like, if you're sitting on that prism base, then the new height is the length of the whole 3D shape. And that's why I'm saying the prism has a height of 20 inches. So just off of that, if you know that you're going to say base times the height, 20 inches should be in the problem. So you can eliminate F, right? But now you're saying how do you find the area of a triangle? What would be the base of a triangle? The 8, the 15, or the 17?
The 8
815.
It's going to be the 15,
Mhm.
right? Because we're saying that the 17 is the hypotenuse. So if you have an 8, a 15, and a 17, the regular area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. So what we're trying to do with a prism is say, let me figure out the triangle base, and then let me multiply this whole thing becomes the base times the 20 of the whole length of the 3D shape. So you need to be thinking about the 8 and the 15 as 1/2 the base times the height. 17 would be if you needed this lateral surface, like we were talking about the side of a tent or something like that. So once you can figure out the shape, and I would say you should draw it on your scrap paper if you need to. Or you're just imagining that out of an 8, a 15, and a 17, the 17 is a hypotenuse. If I'm going to figure out the area of that right triangle, I'm saying 1/2 the base times the height is 1/2 of 8 times 15. And then I know it's one of the ones that's going times 20. So that would make me pick out J.
15, 20.
So I'm saying 1/2 of 8 times 15 will give me the triangle. And then when I multiply that times 20, that will give me the 3D shape, because now I'm going to multiply my triangle base times the 20 of the whole triangular prism. So any questions about that one?
And the answer would be like 1200, right?
1200, yep. Which I didn't even figure that out, but yes. Because now if you're saying, let me take 1/2 of 8 is 4, and then 4 times 15 is 60, and then 6 times 2 is 12, and add the 2 zeros of the 60 and the 20. So that would be 1200.
Okay.
But in a case like this one, and the case of the other one, like 6, you're not even really figuring them out. So once you put the right numbers in the right substitution of the formula, you're done. And that's sometimes how the question is. So this is sometimes how what might be an easier question, and you might only have like, 5 of these. But the idea is that these kinds of questions where you're just replacing, this would also maybe be on the section without the calculator, right? Where you don't actually have to do any figuring, but you have to read the question and apply the numbers in the right way. So there's going to be half of the section with a calculator, one part of math, and then one part of math. You're not using a calculator. And that's what we're going to look at right now. So we're going to stop here with the exercises.
All right.
But for today, it just says TASC Practice Portal. So can you see the portal, or can you see the Google Classroom?
The classroom, Google Classroom.
So these are the instructions, which hopefully make sense. You're going to select online tools training, which is what the link is. You're going to choose what language you're taking the test in. Then you're going to choose the subject. So I'm just going to take a look at math and science really quickly, because I know that those are tests that the majority of people have in common. And then you're going to follow what's on the screen. It's giving you like a username and password just to look at the portal. And then it says follow the directions. So the reason why we're doing this is, like we talked about yesterday, we just want to be comfortable using the TASC practice, especially if you're doing it online. So if you click one, I'm going to click to do it in English. You can see all of the subjects coming up. I'm going to click on math first. So when I click on math, it opens up a practice test portal, and it just tells you to use this username, which is math. And then I'm pretty sure it's some type of online task training. So it's like math OTT. That's what you're typing in as your username. Then it just has tests 1, 2, 3, 4 as the password. So whatever subject you pick to do, you're just going to sign in with the username and password that they're giving you. And then you click on sign in. So now it's telling you welcome. And you may have seen something like this if you've already taken a test, right? You're going to hit continue. You're doing the subject that you picked. So now it's loading. And again, they're not going to tell you if you're right or wrong. So looking at this, it says the purpose of this, okay, it's tools training. Online tools training is to become familiar with the online testing format and to practice using the tools. The online test trainer includes all types of questions that will appear on the test, but it is not the same length as a full test. The online tools training items are not scored, nor are correct answers provided. Read the directions carefully before beginning. To look at the directions again while you're using the online tools training, click the help button and choose test directions tab. So these are sometimes some of the things that people skip because, you know, you might feel like I know what to do on a computer, right? It's pretty obvious. This button that says next is next. You know, like submit is submit, exit. But sometimes these are the things that are important. So this is why we're practicing it. So it's telling you that you have the cursor button for each multiple choice or select the response question. Choose the best answer by clicking on the answer bubble using the pointer tool. If none of the choices match your answer, go back and check your work for possible errors. To change the answer, use the pointer tool to choose a different answer. And this is the button we were talking about. Click on the flag button if you're not sure of the answer to a question. It will mark the question so that you know to go back and answer the question later. If a question says to select more than one answer, be sure to select the number of correct responses indicated in the item. For each constructed response or technology-enhanced question, follow the instructions in the item that describe how to respond. So basically, they're just telling you to read directions, right? But these are some of the other tools that you might be able to use that could be helpful. So there's no time limit to finish this online tools training. However, on the TASC test, the timer will indicate how much time you have to complete each session. Only one question at a time will appear on the screen. To see your progress on the test, click on the review/end test button. You may go to any question by selecting it from the list that appears on the screen. So sometimes, depending if you're doing like a reading test could be a little bit longer, the writing test could be a little bit longer. You might be saying to yourself, how many questions are there? That's what they're saying. You can go to review and say, okay, I have 20 more questions left. If you want to do that, right? We try to say how many questions there are on each test so that when you register, you're kind of prepared for it. To say, okay, if I'm gonna go do the writing test, that's multiple choice and an essay. So I know it's 103 or 5 minutes, but I'm trying to plot out my time. They're just saying in case you forget how many questions of the test that you registered, you can always go to review and see what is left. And you can also use things like a highlighter, which might come in handy, sticky notes, a magnifier, a line guide to assist you. Definitely the mathematics section will have a calculator. So it's saying science and math in session 1 tests will have a calculator. And then of course, a help button again. So if you have, I think this might need flash on your computer. So this is just telling you that you should see 3 circles. That means that the flash is working. And then when you hit begin, you can see all of these items. So now this is running down a clock of an hour, 55 minutes, but I think it's only like something like, let's see. Let's hit the review in button. So this is what it looks like. There's 9 questions only, which is more, you know, they're giving you more than enough time. They just want to show you what it looks like when the clock is running down, right? So these are some of the buttons that we're saying could be helpful to help you use a computer test. And they're giving you some hints. So I would say when you do this, you want to practice the hints and look around and make sure you click on all the buttons. So this one is saying, you press the cross off button to turn on the cross off tool. Use the cross off tool to cross off incorrect answer choices. press the pointer button when you're ready to answer the question. So they're just trying to make a computer be more interactive. So this first one is the cross-off tool. If for some reason you're saying, okay, so the question is, which comparison of the two functions is correct? So you're gonna only pick one question, but if you want to cross something off and get it out of your visual, so this is, again, depends on if you're a visual person or you're more hands-on, you might like to use some of these tools just to get it out of your consideration, right? Then when you're finally done, you want to turn it off or turn back to the pointer and then make a choice of what you want to do. And say this is the one that you're not sure of. So you're clicking one, like we said, you're clicking an answer, but you're also flagging it, and then you're saying to yourself, you're just going to go to the next question.
Mhm.
So now here's one of the ones that you're filling in an answer. So it says, practice hint, enter your answer using the keypad below. You can use the fraction button to enter your answer as a fraction. So now this is just a reminder of some other buttons, right? So there are 3 blue marbles and 4 red marbles in a bottle. What is the probability of selecting a blue marble from the bottle when 1 marble is selected at random? So if you want to say, I'm going to take, there's a 3 out of 4 chance. I'm sorry, 3 out of 7, all of the marbles. Then you want to use the fraction button and say, I have a 3 on top and then a 7 on the bottom, right? Now, some of the other things, like it could be use the highlighter and you're maybe highlighting the numbers if you want to. Use a sticky note and you can type something in there if you want. So this is a way for you to—
Which one is the highlighter? The second one? After
yeah,
the arrow?
that kind of just looks like a pen in a way.
All right.
So now, and this is because you might want to do that with science. You might want to do it with the word problems, like what numbers are really important, like we did when we were saying doing the cubes method. You might want to do it in reading if you're like, okay, this is an important part, or you might want to do the sticky note or something like that because some of your passages are longer. The idea is to just use whatever you think is going to help you focus. So the calculator is basically using the buttons that we have practiced, like the negative button. This up arrow is for other exponents, and maybe we'll get up to some trigonometry buttons while we're off. But the idea is you have to click these things if you want to use them. Even like the magnifier, you can make something bigger if that would help you, right? So you're trying to be as comfortable as you can and just get to know the buttons so that you're feeling more comfortable when you actually go take the test. And for the formula sheet,
I love that.
That's important.
we can see a couple are on here, right? So here's cylinder, and you can see they're starting with volume, right? So we've got cylinder, pyramid, cone, sphere. Those are the ones that we looked at, not some of the so many abstract shapes, but some of the basic shapes. And then here is the formula for them. So even when they give you the formula, you're saying to yourself, I just have to focus on doing the algebra part of the formula. So this is why we were saying you just want to memorize the flat shapes of area because you are going to have some kinds of something is going to be on your formula sheet. Even the simple interest formula that we did, I equals PRT, and then they're telling you what everything stands for. You've got the Pythagorean theorem on here. So the idea is if you know what you're looking for, you can come here and pull it out. But if you don't know what you're looking for, it wouldn't do anything anyway, right? So I think that what we're gonna do next is the graphing geometry. So we are gonna do slope and that type of thing. So we'll probably get to the slope formula too. And maybe we'll be able to do some more angles because that's kind of along the lines of stuff that we've already done. So that plus functions should get you through a lot of the test, right? But this is just telling you, you can use these things that are up here and go to the next question. So by the end, if you were reviewing, you can see right here is where you put a flag. And from here, they're saying you can go to any question. So you have a check mark for what was answered. You have nothing for the ones that I didn't answer. And then you have the flag at the one that was flagged. So if you're coming to the end of your test and you're like, okay, I didn't do this one. Let me click on number 7. Let me answer the question. I don't know, you know, I'm just gonna pick anything.
That button on the top where it says line guide, that one's also good for if you don't want to use a pointer, right?
Yes, it is. So let me take a look at another test just to show you that one. So I want you to just go in. You can try to answer the questions if you want and play the question, or, you know, play around, use all of the buttons. But as you can see, you're just going to submit the test, and then you're done, right? So if I go back, I'll pick a different one. Pick reading, because I'm sure that has a lot. So these things I think are very important, but sometimes, again, if you don't pay attention to your directions and you're just ready to do the test, you might not put that much weight into them, but I think it could be helpful. So if you're looking at the line guide and you're just gonna pull down, you know, another challenge with reading something online is you can't really touch it. So like we were saying, the purpose of speed reading is to connect your hands with your eyes, because those two senses are together. So just controlling the line guide, sometimes when people are reading online like this, or even in a book, all the words can kind of run together. So that's what the purpose of this is for you to be able to say, okay, line by line by line, I'm focusing, which is really important. Again, that focus increases your comprehension and it helps you really stay connected to the passage. But when you're scrolling, you know, and it's line after line after line after line after line, you can lose your place being, you know, a foot or two from a computer screen. So this is just an idea that you can use this line guide to help you. If, again, you feel like I'm more hands-on, I like to read with the mouse, like I've been practicing for speed reading, or I like to read with my finger, like I've been practicing. I'm normally reading on a book, you know, or paper in my hand. Then you want to do something like this. And this is also giving you the hint to increase the magnifier, you know, to use the scrolling, just to make it more comfortable. So I think whichever one, you know, try everyone is different, you know, so if you're gonna do reading or social studies, you might definitely want to use the line guide because the passages are longer. If you're going to do any test, you might want to say, like we said about the last question we just did, if I'm not sure, or just in my predicting, if I could cross something out, that might be helpful. So you might want to use the eliminator tool so that you're not looking at it and not considering it anymore. So this is, again, we might do that quiz again about are you visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. But for people who know that they're visual, these types of things can just be more interactive and more helpful to see a big red X over what you're not going to include. And it also gives you a way to use your mouse and, you know, feel like you're writing and taking notes like you normally would be doing in class, as opposed to just looking at the screen and picking out A, B, C, or D. So this is what the homework is for today, is just to go in and really look at how the test is made. But I'm also going to just put the practice test websites back up. So I want you to finish the composite section, the composite drill of Aztec, if you haven't done that. And then also because we did a couple of questions, and even like I think number 9 coming up is about algebra. So we also have the review of algebra on there. So if you look at the work from yesterday, we were just doing polynomials as a reminder. So because you sometimes are talking about length times width or the shape having a binomial or using the FOIL method, we said you can go to Aztec and review that section in algebra, factoring polynomials. Also look at factoring polynomials or finding a common factor from Khan Academy, just to review a little bit of algebra if you have already finished the Khan Academy geometry. So they're definitely gonna overlap. And then we added some aquatic ecosystems for today. So this is the section of study jams. And then I just picked out the anglerfish for you to get a video. But we're also going to take a look at a couple of other aquatic ecosystems. So I think there might be a YouTube video there too, but this one's going to go over the ocean, so freshwater and saltwater idea in the ecosystem. And then starting maybe Thursday, we'll start talking about food chain, food webs in all of these different ecosystems. So we've done 4 on land and we're gonna do 2 in the water. But they're talking about, if you see this little intro, freshwater and saltwater, and then oceans, rivers, swamps, bogs, streams. So you're thinking of any one of those things as an ecosystem. What's gonna be in a river is not gonna be the same as what's in a swamp, and that's not gonna be the same as what's in the ocean. So once we get a good hold on a couple of the ecosystems, then we'll start talking about the food webs and food chains. So you can go ahead if you want, of course. That would be these next 2 to 4. But we should have done these 2 by the end of this week. So this ecosystems was last week. Now we're on aquatic ecosystems. The changes in ecosystems and biomes, we kind of did already, but you can of course look at these again. So there's a video. Let me see if this other one is a video. I think these are good overviews. The things that we're gonna do on the food web, yep, all of them are videos, so I think that that's pretty quick. But we are gonna do some things in the textbook again on the food webs and food chains. So I think that these are a good intro on study jams, but we will add the science textbook that we were using, which I believe is like chapter 2, just as a refresher. And don't forget, there's no class on Friday, so we're not gonna do the graphic or movie or picture for the week, because we're not gonna have class on Friday to talk about it. So we're just gonna focus on ecosystems, this practice portal, and I'll add something to this. I'll just add the websites that we've already been on. So that is the 4 tests, the TASC practicetest.com, and of course you can do something on Aztec because there are practice tests there too. So I feel like we are gonna do this little review of algebra this week. You might want to do a practice test now. So we were saving the practice test for math kind of like towards the end of the session, but we kind of have gotten to the end of the session. So we have done algebra and geometry, definitely intros. We're gonna go into the more advanced geometry coming up next and the graphing of shapes. So I think that you should be able to get through at least 50% of the test because of doing statistics and doing geometry and doing algebra. So if you go to something like the TASC practice test, the reason why I say to do math last is because you have to kind of be able to see various things, right? It's not like reading or writing, where maybe if you never read a certain topic, you would still be able to answer some questions about it. Math is a little bit different, right? So if we go through, the first one was exponents. The second one is just algebra and distributing for the parentheses. But now number 3, this one is calculate the volume. And you know that this is a cylinder, right? So far, you would have been able to get through those. We haven't done a lot of measurement. I think we only did that like one day, so we'll probably come back to that one. But the percentage was in probability, which we did. Now, f of x is getting to functions, but it's still just algebra. So when they say something like this, f of x equals, and then they have an expression, and then they say f is 2.5, that's what you're gonna put for every x. They're just saying f is x. So a lot of times they do that with functions. They might have h, g, whatever it is, but you're gonna use that as substitution and just go back to doing algebra. Then here's kind of like an algebra question. This one is back to statistics, number 8. This one is, you know, still statistics, probability, percentage. This one, it's graphing. So we haven't technically done that, but you might be able to solve just using your algebra skills. This one we haven't done, but this one we have, right? Box and whisker plot. We did that with chapter 8, I'm pretty sure, was statistics. So we did negative exponents. We did the Pythagorean theorem. So as you're seeing, we're on number, what, 14? And the majority of these, we have touched on those subjects. So if you want to try out the math test now, I would say to go for it, right? There's 40 questions. So this is a good test because this is almost close to something that you could do, except for the graphing. Like you're gonna see on the TASC practice test, the style of the TASC test is different from just multiple choice, but the topics on this test are pretty good. So you can start out with this one and see how many you can get right. You can definitely do the one that's in Aztec, and what you're looking for is, can you get, you know, 60, 70, 80, 90%? If you're getting a 90%, you're definitely ready to take the test. Truthfully, if you're getting a 70, 80, 90%, you're absolutely ready. If you're getting even like 50% to 60%, that means you could probably pass, because the range for passing again is 500 out of 800. So that's still like, I'm doing a little bit more than half of the test. Now, what I say is the questions that you get wrong when you practice, that's what you want to type into Math is Fun and just do a refresher, or do the lesson that's on Aztec. So like, say you didn't get this one right, you're like, hey, we didn't go over logarithms. That could be something that you study, right? So we'll probably get to a basic intro because we are looking at the calendar. Looks like we have the whole month of May to be together. And I'm not sure about what's gonna happen in June. So we should be able to get through another almost 2 chapters. And
You let us know Monday what is going on.
I know, right? So this is a tutoring group, you know?
Okay.
We're familiar with each other already. We have the basics down. So it's not like a new class. Uh-oh, here comes my baby. That means it's time to get off.
All right.
When a little naked baby comes in, that means it's time to go.
Okay.
So this is the only thing that we're doing today. You can keep working on the 7.3, but do the review of algebra.
Okay.
And try out the portal, definitely. If you have time, especially because we don't have class on Friday, I'm gonna put the suggestion up for Friday, because that's something that is, if you do 40 questions, that's at least like an hour's worth of work. So I will just put task practice tests for a test or Aztec up for you to do a practice of any subject. And I'm suggesting the math because that's what we put the most effort into. Maybe towards the end of June, we'll do the practice test for science and you can see what topics are on there. But we have to do the same thing, like work through a couple more subjects in science. So if you have any questions, you can send me a text message.
All right.
If you have any questions, well, we should be able to get through 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, another like 5 to 6 problems tomorrow, and then the last of the problems on Thursday, so that we are done with this section by the end of the week. And then it's up to you.
Okay.
Like we were saying yesterday, you have a vote. Do you want to do 7.4, or are you just done with geometry? That's going to be completely up to you, because I feel like we have done a lot of it. And when you look at these that are on a lot of practice tests, they're not the advanced geometry. So we can keep going, of course, but it's completely up to you. If you feel like, hey, Aztec, Khan Academy, math is fun, the textbook, I'm good. Then we'll move on to the graphing. So I'll ask you on Thursday, and maybe I'll just put it out in a little survey. If you're ready to move on, we've done a lot. We don't have to do 7.4 of the TASC exercise book. I can still load it up there if you're interested in it, but it's completely up to you. So think about that as you're doing your practice. If you get a good score, like 30 out of 40, 35 out of 40, you probably don't need to do any more of that, right? So we're kind of just taking inventory to see if it's better to go to a new subject or if it's better to keep going with geometry.
Okay.
So any questions?
No.
No, Miss Lee.
Okay, so then enjoy your practice and I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.